Thanks, Alex. Hello again. All right, I'm really excited to share some preliminary data from a survey that many of you probably had in your inbox several months ago. So we distributed a survey widely between 3 different consortium groups. CGC, the Variant Interpretation for Cancer Consortium, and the ClinGen Somatic Working Group. And we sent the survey out to all 3 distribution lists, and the goals of the survey were to observe a snapshot of global reporting practices for NGS cancer tests. We wanted to identify elements that were considered essential for an NGS cancer report, to identify reported elements that maybe aren't essential for a report, and also to identify differences between how different regions of the world report NGS cancer variants. I'm not going to get too much into that 4th point. However, my co-lead, Manuela Benari, from the Berlin Institute of Health will be presenting on that point at ESMO this year. So in the first 73 survey responses, we represented 17 countries, 6 continents, and the countries with the most responses were the United States, Germany, and Canada. Most of our responses came from clinical laboratory professionals. However, we also had responses from researchers, folks that work in commercial entities, and people who worked in multiple entities. So the survey structure was built upon a couple different concepts. So first, what elements are actually in a clinical report. So kind of a binary, do you report this or not? And secondarily, we wanted to capture kind of more of a subjective feel of each of these elements. In your opinion, do you feel this element is essential, preferred and not essential, or not recommended? We also captured information about how different variant types are interpreted in the same report. If there were any concerns about reporting variant allele frequency, what information is essential regarding clinical trials, and how are molecular profiles reported, like HRD or MSI or tumor mutational burden, and how are interacting variants reported. So kind of just jumping into the data, we found that general information about a variant, pretty straightforward. Most of or all of these elements are reported globally and deemed essential. So those include the result summary, diagnosis, tissue source, tumor purity, assay limitations, performance characteristics, and disclaimers. When we look into variant annotation, most of these elements are deemed essential and are reported, including the gene symbol, P dot and C dot nomenclature, the gene transcript, and allele frequency. However, G dot nomenclature is seen as preferred and not essential and is not typically reported. So elements related to variant details are generally reported, but there's a higher prevalence of these elements being in the preferred but not essential category and not necessarily deemed absolutely essential for the report. And these include prevalence of the variant type in the tumor type, the use of different guidelines, and variant functional mechanisms. So you can see the yellow, these yellow dots kind of migrating over to be a little bit more prevalent in our survey responses than these essential elements. So reporting elements related to clinical relevance we saw the same trend. So they're preferred, not necessarily essential in a lot of different laboratories. And these include diagnostic, prognostic, therapeutic information. Therapeutic information was seen as essential. References, so PMIDs, databases used, versions of databases in clinical trials. So we also wanted to capture a lot of information on clinical trials and what elements regarding the clinical trials are most important. And so we ranked those from most essential on the top to least essential on the bottom. So our most essential elements for clinical trials are the clinical trial ID, the phase of the trial, and then filtering those trials by like the recruiting status. And then molecular profiles, again, we wanted to see whether or not these were reported across all tumor types or select tumor types. And then also if we were reporting things from a qualitative standpoint or quantitative. So most of the molecular profiles listed here are reported across all tumor types with the exception of HRD, which makes sense. And then most of these molecular profiles are more frequently reported out from with a qualitative value, except for tumor mutational burden. Again, makes sense. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you so much for listening. We are still collecting survey responses. There's a QR code here, and there's also one on my poster. Thank you to the consortium groups that contributed to distributing the survey. We're looking forward to putting together a manuscript in the near future. And thanks to all of my co-authors and people who helped structure the survey. So, thank you.